Simona, I'm so excited to talk to you. And I know that we just finished a kernel block where you are a steward, and I felt so lucky to kind of witness and experience you in action in terms of just like the very practical and wise nuggets you impart on, particularly in the kernel program, on fellows constantly. I think like the rate of wisdom that like comes out of you, I don't know. I've never seen anything like it, and I'm so grateful that you're the type of person, like a lot of people in Ethereum, but especially you, that you're the type of person that just like shows up and just gives so much. But it must come naturally to you just on this idea, because I imagine that if it isn't who you are to be like that, it's basically not sustainable. So I'd love to know just a bit of background into I think maybe even back to your family and growing up and why crypto holds, such a special place for you.
Yeah, so I think kind of starting with from that point of if it's not who you are, it's not necessarily sustainable. I think it kind of really, the immersion into crypto kind of triggered that more so than ever before, I think, because there are so many opportunities and so many instances where contributing and helping makes such a big difference that I think it's what continues to fuel that desire to do even more. Whereas I think it's maybe in Web 2 or anything that I had done before, maybe I was doing it, but because everything was already solidified and cemented in the way things run, in the way things are laid out, it leaves so much less room for creativity and just how much a simple contribution can, just what effect a simple contribution can have. And I think that's one of the main reasons why, for me, it's very important to, support newcomers into the ecosystem, support people at the beginning of their journeys and throughout. But I think particularly in the beginning, it's a very, very important piece of the puzzle and maybe step in the journey where it's as incredibly valuable because it's at the beginning, and also I feel it encourages people to continue on that path. And I think that's a very important thing that we just traditionally, let's say, certainly in Web 2, we don't really encounter much of that, right? It's that kind of, this is go, right? If you have an idea, just go with it. And there's so many people to help you and support you and encourage you and make you feel like this is, you are valuable, your contribution is valuable, what you have to say is valuable, what you want to do is valuable. Obviously, also tell you if it's complete garbage, because I think that's also part of the, of supporting somebody and being very honest. And I think this is a space that really has definitely unlocked that for me to an extent that I maybe didn't think possible. Like, I've always had the energy there, but I think this is just kind of almost set it loose more so than I thought it was possible.
Yeah. And so that idea of empowerment, I feel really, so I read the piece that you released, the first piece that you released on Mirror at pop.mirror.xyz, and called Home, about Brandon's journey, starting with the Bounties Network and then, progressing to being an artist, going from being homeless to not being homeless, which is so incredible. I don't think it's impossible not to be moved when you read that story, and I almost feel like it should be like a weekly practice, almost like maybe just like a Sunday practice where everyone should just like come back and read a story like this, to just kind of realign us, and so we remember what it is that we're doing here. I think in the piece it said, you know, what crypto could be a tool for the betterment of society as a whole. And there are so many pieces in that statement that I would love to unpack. So, you know, tool, betterment, society, and whole. I just realized reading that one sentence how narrow, even, you know, we're in Web3 and everything's, you know, cracked wide open, just how narrow my own perspective of society as a whole is, and how, you know, just reading that piece really caused a lot of shifts for me, and I'm so grateful for that. Thank you so much. And I wonder if we could just talk about that piece a little bit, and you could just share about that story of Brandon's.
Absolutely. I also think you should have him on the podcast as well. And I can connect you guys, and,
awesome.
And you can chat if he's comfortable with that. But I think, see, for me, those are the stories that really matter. And those are the use cases of crypto that I really care about. I think everything else is a distraction and potentially artifice. I think enabling new pathways and enabling choice for people who right now aren't being served by the current socioeconomical dynamics. And that can be on a spectrum of severity, or, you know, I guess it can have many manifestations, right? But I think we are now at this point where we have so many different moving parts of the tech stack available for us to redesign, to improve, to put in the service of genuine human thriving versus the same old pathways of centralizing power, centralizing money, centralizing resources that just isn't serving people and is creating this dynamic of just growth obsessed, consumerism obsessed mindset that really isn't leading us to anything better, right? We've kind of been in this pathway, for decades and kind of generations, and it's not necessarily it doesn't lead to a better state of affairs. And I think with crypto, what we have the chance of doing is really redrawing those lines. As I wrote in the piece, you know, really breaking this cemented lines of lack that just have been around for too long and are keeping so much potential and so much value in so many people in a dynamic that is just not where they should be. It's not what they should experience. And I think with Brandon in particular, it's one of those journeys that I'm so thankful to have witnessed, because it is genuinely that embodiment of what this technology can do. And it really, like you said, it really grounds us and it brings us back to like, okay, why are we here? Yes, you know, crypto Twitter is hilarious and this, that, and the other. Yes, people are making a lot of money, but really what it all boils down to is how we are redrawing the flows of our society and of our economies. Because again, the way we have it set up now is based on archaic views on what value is, on how it flows, on who benefits from it, and so on. So, it's important to have more and more of those stories, and it's one of the things that I've always focused on is how do we affect change in the real world and not on paper. It's something that I say all the time, you know, walk the walk versus talk the talk. There's a lot of people who talk a lot. I talk a lot, but I also tend to like do the walking because it's good for your health, and also, you know, good for the future.
Yeah, I think this idea of value in particular was really interesting because Brandon mentioned after he completed a particular bounties task that he was really happy that night. He felt useful. And I thought that made me think about this idea that, you know, the way that we think we are helping and have helped over the last couple of decades is just to give people you know, say money, as opposed to giving them work or an opportunity to provide value, to kind of feel useful in exchange for money. Because what people, money, I guess, it you know, it goes into your bank account and that feels good at a moment and you get that rush, but it kind of, you know, dissipates quite quickly. Whereas that feeling of being useful, you know, how it can kind of bestow dignity on you in a way that nothing else can, because it is something that, you know, came from within you, seems so much like it's just much more long lasting, and I think can compound really in a way that, you know, just giving someone money once doesn't. And so how do we I guess in your, based on your experience, how do we provide opportunities for people in the real world? And also, like, who are these people that you have in mind? And like I mentioned, who we are forgetting when we think about society as a whole that could really benefit from, crypto?
So there's many layers to that.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first one is that, again, we have been taught that value equals money. Mm-hmm. And that's it. There is very little other forms of value that we as a global society hold in great esteem. Look at what happened with the support for artists during the COVID restrictions. Literally bottom of the barrel were the artists and anybody who was involved in creative pursuits. There were the last ones to essentially be allowed to engage in their trade again, and also the ones that benefited from the least amount of support. Now, a society that regards artists and creative endeavors as bottom of the barrel is in pretty deep trouble. And everything else that sits on top of it, to the, you know, the upper echelons, are always again the very traditional, let's say, money spinning, money focused entities. And it is a result of the fact that we have just, again, through generations and learning about the same thing, you have money, you are something. Your status equals money. How much money, what is your buying power, and all of that. And we have really just created this monetary monoculture in terms of how we think about value, but also in terms of how we, in terms of the different opportunities that we create for people within the economy, is yet again determined by that. And so anything that doesn't make more money is seen as a lesser endeavor, which obviously, as we know, it should absolutely not be the case. And I think in terms of getting involved and you know, creating whatever that means, right? Creation isn't just you know, a painting or music and anything like that. People create in all sorts of ways. And I think bringing that back into focus of the fact that all creation is valuable, or individual contributions are valuable, is a shifting not only of how we perceive others, but how others perceive themselves, right? So if I am not necessarily in a role where I am viewed by the current socioeconomic kind of landscape as an asset, that is not the reality, right? That's just something that somebody or generations of somebodies have decided that this is the status quo, and that's just how it is. which also means that it's an arbitrary thing. We can change that all and at any time. And I think this is why it's so important to make sure that we effect this change, not just talk about it, because it is changeable, right? It isn't a law. None of this is absolute.
Yeah.
We just decided this stuff. We can go back and change it anytime. This is the thing. And I think the more people become comfortable with that, and I think I mentioned that when, in our fireside with Sarah Zucker, we have that ability to decide that this is no longer the way we want to do things. And we have to get back to, like, unlearn all of the crap that we've been fed for all this time and realize that we have a lot of power as individuals and as communities, a lot of power. It's just that we've been lulled into the sense of like, oh, nothing much we can do, or just one person or a group of people, far bigger powers are at play. But we have to start, and we have to create the means for that change to happen and grow.
Yeah. And so just on that idea, does it start with just changing one life? Like the being a part of Brandon's journey and seeing that one life change, I think sometimes where action kind of loses its thrust is that, we're trying to affect change at a level that is not, that is hard to take action for. And so what does it look like to really, like, what are some initiatives or things in your head or things that you've seen where people are really just taking action? It might affect one person or a few people, but you can just really get out there and do something, like anything.
I think and again, this has been my experience, I think creating opportunities for anyone to get involved. And this, when I say anyone, I genuinely mean anyone. We talk about, banking, the unbanked and all of that, but how many of those narratives actually provide a very clear path or clear opportunities for genuinely anybody to get involved? And when I say anybody, I mean not necessarily with money in their pocket to do this on DeFi and benefit, from this, that, and the other. And don't get me wrong, those are absolutely things that are great, and they have their place in the journey. But the beginning of the journey is incredibly important and is not accessible for a lot of people still. It's getting better, I mean, I'm personally 4 years into building in this space, and it's definitely getting better, but we're not there yet. So I would say from my perspective, again, just taking bounties as that example, what I really wanted is to have bounties for anybody, not based on technical ability, not based on a particular set of skills, just opportunities for people to participate, engage with a decentralized application, and earn crypto. I think the whole earn as you learn piece is incredibly important, and it is incredibly, it lends itself so well to the way people learn, and that is by doing. Reading something, there's so many blog posts, there's so much material, but genuinely give people something to play with and interact with that is simple enough, that is cheap enough, that is accessible enough, that is maybe in different languages. That would also be helpful. And enable them to then have that door that is open, and then a very clear map of where they can go next. Because again, from my experience, people would come in, do one bounty, then have money to pay for their gas to do others. And then you start discovering other things, right? We had this bounty in partnership with, I think, Pixura at the time, which is super rare. It's another project of theirs that was around in 2018, 2019. Create self-portraits or portraits of people in Ethereum. Great. Didn't matter that you weren't, a Picasso or a Basquiat. It was something that you could do to the best of your abilities. And I think just opening that up and really creating those paths for a broad kind of audience or variety of people to tap into and try it out. Just try it out and see how you find it. Maybe for a lot of people, they didn't even bother to go through, the process of setting up a wallet. Fine. Maybe they came back. Fine. But for anybody who stuck with it and completed some of those bounties or took part in the many earn as you learn kind of flows that I created throughout that project, it's an opportunity to get acquainted, earn, and then be able to have some money in your pocket to continue your journey to the next stop and the next stop and the next stop and the next stop. And as part of that, you also figure out what you're passionate about, what you maybe want to do, what you are good at. Maybe you discover all sorts of communities. There are a lot of people who, discovered a lot of communities as part of their journeys and then joined them and they got more involved and, they got to a place where, they could be prominent parts of those or core contributors to those projects. So I think, again, enabling a journey or giving people the opportunity to join a journey or start a journey is incredibly, incredibly important. And I think, again, just to add another piece, just coming back to the money and throwing money at something, the way we've kind of been used to, I guess, in, oh my God, maybe I was going to say traditional society. Maybe this is a new thing. It's tradso. Anyway, TM, no. Is I run the scholars program for ETHDenver, and in 2020 we had put together a cohort of scholars, and one of those scholars was Adrian, who's from Venezuela, and he would code on his phone. Was like part of one of the earn as you learn or like workshops that I was running at ETHDenver, and then the guys at Consensus Academy had a smart contracts session, like intro to smart contracts, and Coogan, who was running it, was basically thought that he was texting or like messaging or something as they were going through the material and as they were going through the kind of flow of the workshop, and then realized when to help somebody else behind him, and then realized that what Adrian was actually doing was following the whole thing, but on his phone and coding on his phone. And this is what he had been doing, right? He had, I think, even done a couple of bounties code base. And I mentioned this to people, and the immediate reaction is, let's all pitch in and buy him a laptop. And I'm like, well, let's not assume that this is what he wants. Like, maybe that's just not what he wants. And indeed, I asked him, and he was like, no, I'm pretty comfortable doing everything that I'm doing right now. I just want more opportunities to get involved, to pitch in, to work, to do all of those things. And that is the whole, as far as I'm concerned, the whole essence of this whole thing that we're doing here, enabling opportunity and choice and providing those freely, easily accessible, easily, in a way that's easy to get involved. And I think that's, at the end of it, that is the main thing. And it comes back to feeling useful. It comes back to wanting to do more. It comes back to just wanting to participate and get involved and having the ability to do that.
That really resonates with me, because I feel like Kernel was to me what, bounties was to Brandon, in the sense that I was, just as he was, sitting on the outside as an observer, kind of wondering how to participate, thinking that I'm pretty sure this is it for me. Like, these are my people. but I don't know what to do. Like you said, I wasn't sure. I don't know if I couldn't see the door, if I didn't know what door to walk through. And then I would say it's kind of funny, I mentioned this on Twitter, but seeing your post just in the She 256 Discord about applying to Kernel when I had decided not to apply because I didn't think I would get in it and I didn't want to waste time for them, not me. And then when you just made that comment, which I'm sure, you know, it's kind of crazy to think that just that comment, if I didn't see it in that Discord, I can, you know, say with certainty that I then wouldn't have gone back and applied. And then to apply and get into Kernel and then just have, you know, the most life-changing 8 weeks is so... Life-changing isn't... It's funny because life-changing implies like that I think it's changed my life now in the present. But I think also going through that program has also changed my perspective of my life in my past, how I think about things, what you were talking about, this unlearning and deprogramming. It just felt like kind of the best immersive experience in terms of, walking through that door, there's a path laid out. It's just kind of the best version of that first experience from being an outsider to knowing how to participate and being able to participate. You know, I've applied to things in the past that are US based and I'm based in New Zealand. And I know that at least once, I'm sure the time zone thing came up. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that, you know, the Kernel team probably saw that I was based in New Zealand and they thought, okay, this is going to be 3:00 in the morning for her, but we'll just accept her anyway, because I was so starved for opportunity that no matter literally what time of the day it was, I would turn up, because that's all I wanted. I just wanted an opportunity to participate. And so I'm so grateful to you for that and to Kernel, the program, because that was everything that I needed. And now, I hope that I can continue like you to kind of give people, just like shine a light on that door, so people know that it's there, how to walk through it, like what happens when you walk through it. I think and agree with you that kind of beginner experience. I also, it's funny, you know, because people talk about onboarding with crypto, and just reading that piece and what Brandon said about being like a silent observer. And I wonder how many silent observers like me are there in the space who could be onboarded, you know, as opposed to going out and getting your neighbor and, you know, people all around your physical community or high school friends or whatever it is, but like literally just people on the periphery of this space and onboarding them. So do you think that's a missed opportunity? Or
I think we sometimes get, I think there's sometimes that tendency to get way ahead of ourselves before doing like the very simple things. Because I mean, crypto is so rich with experimentation and so rich with so many layers of complexity that for a lot of people, it's incredibly, incredibly daunting. So you see a lot of people and you hear like from, let's say from an outsider's perspective, or not, I don't even want to say outsider, from somebody who isn't necessarily in at the heart of it all. Because also I hate the whole like no coiner and all of that. I think like it's just people who aren't as into it as you are, or don't know where to start. So I think you hear all these stories about people buying boats and taking a loan, and it like you pays off in this time, and people are like, wait, what? But I also have to have the money in beforehand, and that I can only take 50% out. And then what happens with the repayment? But how does that work? And all of this, to the point where you get yourself into such a tiz that you just go, maybe it's not for me. Maybe I don't get it. And so I think, again, if there are more opportunities, and we saw this with NFTs, right? Because NFTs were infinitely easier to grasp versus DeFi, right? It made sense. You see it. This is what it means. This is what it does. The concepts are far, far less convoluted, complicated, daunting, and we saw, everybody kind of going, oh my God, this is great, wonderful, how do we get involved? And so, but of course with that comes again the stories of the super high sales, the money, all of this. And again, we fall into the whole thing of like, well, I'm an artist, I just started getting involved and I'm not making any sales. And then you start having the whole thing, maybe I'm not doing it right, maybe this isn't for me, maybe this is like da 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 da. And then even if you attempted to get involved, maybe you get discouraged, maybe you don't stick around, maybe you don't even sometimes have enough cash to mint an NFT, because this is again something that's very, very important. How do you support people when they may not be in a situation where they can afford to spend $100-$200 on minting an NFT? That's not necessarily something that the vast population can do. And so I think putting things in place for educating, supporting, suggesting, kind of almost having an initiation process that is very, very comfortable. It's when you feel, yes, this is the right path. And like you mentioned earlier, I think when you find the people and you find the fact that they are talking about things that you've been thinking about for a while, you want there to be a process and a journey to take you from that realization onto the next stage and onto the next and onto the next and onto the next. Most people, and like we said, most people can walk through a door by themselves and then figure out what they want to do. But shining the light on that door, making sure there's multiple doors. It doesn't just have to be the one door. There could be multiple that take you to different experiences of the same thing, right? And I think making more and more of those accessible is what we need to be doing, because again, it isn't just the one door, because then centralization, right? There should be multiple doors. There should be all the doors with all sorts of different keys. And again, it's how we create those opportunities, whether it's stuff that we're doing now, for instance, with Status, where we're educating and we are onboarding artists in Latin America onto NFTs and the different platforms. And then we have something coming soon in partnership with Super Rare to basically support those artists on those journeys. And it's an important piece, right? And I think finding and figuring out how we do more of that. Do we do more scholarship programs? Do we do more, free education? Do we do more earn as you learn programs? There are plenty of pathways, like Rabbit Hole is a great example of being able to, again, level up and learn and maybe earn. There's other initiatives, again, that are coming with regards to enabling those flows and also peppering them with different types of incentives, different kind of access to different opportunities as part of that journey. And I think we just need more of those journeys versus always necessarily expecting people to get it. And if they don't, well, tough shit. And look, I'm also aware that a lot of these things are because we are so early. I'm sure that in a few years' time, people will just know stuff because it's just been around for a lot longer and it's just been covered, in a better way. And it's just, we've normalized talking about certain concepts. We've normalized talking about certain opportunities. So it's kind of a combination of things, but I always think more opportunities for broader, audiences to get involved.
So the thing that I wonder about, if the money, say, isn't going directly to people, say you're not just as an initiative giving people crypto in their wallet and you are creating bounties or opportunities for them to earn the crypto instead. Who does this fall upon to fund like these initiatives if we like obviously don't have, like a centralized government in this ecosystem? And so how does that work in terms of funding all of these public goods essentially, right? Because there's no expectation that initiative would make money, that it would that it's kind of in existence to make a profit. There's no expectation that the people receiving the crypto would, again, if you think about it more as just an expression of creativity, like an exercising participation in creativity as opposed to kind of profiting. How do you then reconcile giving people that opportunity and creating those initiatives with like how we fund those initiatives?
Well, one of the main things that I always like, the cleanup that we did in the Philippines in 2018, we actually crowdsourced most of that money. And it was just people contributing straight to the bounty by just literally a button saying contribute. And that was anybody and everybody from, obviously, we as a project at that time put money in, different other projects in the ecosystem put money in, but also individuals. I had somebody message me on LinkedIn saying, hey, I just got paid $300 for a technical interview. Can I just donate it to that? And I'm like, go right ahead. Absolutely. And so I think, again, creating opportunities that aren't that complicated will make people donate and support. Look at Gitcoin. Gitcoin is now what? The round 10 is, and it's been growing steadily ever since inception. And it is because people want to support initiatives that are valuable for the greater good, that are valuable for our ecosystem, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's media, whether it's regional initiatives, which are personally my favorite. And I'm so glad to see round after round after round, there's more and more and more regional initiatives. And those could be putting out content in different languages. Those could be organizing meetups. Those could be organizing all sorts of opportunities, again, to get more people in, to get them educated, to give them a community to be part of, so that, again, that initiation process is something that is supported and a good experience. And I think, again, it comes back to this idea of not everything has to make you shit ton of money.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. And this obtuse and terribly stunted view on things that the only value is the value that makes you more money is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And actually, I think if the sooner we rid ourselves of all of that, the more money can flow, because nobody's hoarding it, you see. And also this also comes from this obsession that we have had for generations of hoarding money, because you have to keep it, because otherwise it goes and somebody else will take it, and like all of this obsession with like holding on to it. If you look at things like, and it's really, really interesting, there's so much, and I could talk about this until the cows come home, but about the way monetary policy and our relationship with money has been in a certain way, when in fact, if you introduce small things like let's say demurrage, which is basically a tax that is from shipping, that if you held a ship in a port for longer than X amount of days, you would pay a tax for sitting, for keeping that space. And so if you were to introduce demurrage into the whole monetary flow, and actually you would get taxed for holding on to it and not moving it around the system, the community, and so on, what would happen? What would happen? Let's see. And it also brings to mind, which is something that, again, I am a firm believer in, this complementary currency dynamic where we're seeing now a lot of projects with their own tokens and a lot of communities operating with their own tokens. I think that's a wonderful idea. And the more variety and diversity you have in terms of money, or rather the stores of value, or the conventions that we have agreed on that, represent cash money, is a very interesting one, because it moves us from this all eggs in one basket dynamic to a very nicely diversified, a very nicely flowing dynamic, versus holding on to things. You spend things within your community, and that means there's liquidity, and that means there's movement, and that means that there is no hoarding, and that means there's more value in the system, and that means that we can ensure that value continuously flows and grows and potentially benefits everybody who's part of that ecosystem, or those layers.
It sounds like if we just stopped and maybe redesigned the ecosystems and economies and crypto based more on nature than whatever kind of policy has emerged over the last couple of decades, would probably be a better starting point. Because when you talk about circulation versus hoarding and things like this, I always think of, I don't know where I read this, or a podcast that I heard it on, but just this idea that, a tree that bears fruit, it doesn't hold on, a tree doesn't hold on to its fruit, and it falls and it goes back into the earth, and then, the cycle continues. And so what we're essentially doing is like with trees trying to hold on to the fruit, and it's not working.
Well, we've all been educated in an extractive mindset. Get as much as possible out of something, resource other people. This is why we have like all of these. I mean, how are we paying as societies, paying people, ridiculous wages as minimum wage? Because the whole idea is, how do we extract more for less? Versus a regenerative look at things, where it's like, again, there is a cycle, always, because that is what ensures the health of the whole thing. And it's, again, one of the things that I always chat about, in terms of communities, and bringing the stale and incomplete measurements of Web 2, even Web 2 marketing, into a space where you don't want just superficial measurements, right? Because, for instance, if you consider a human body, if somebody just looked at your height and your weight, they'd be like, oh, okay, that's good. But never looking on the inside, never seeing how things work. Is everything in line? Is everything going, running smoothly? You would just go, yeah, that's good. Out, next. You want to have that, look at the health of something to know that it is thriving, versus a superficial look at a couple of stats. Yeah, great,
definitely a holistic approach to it. But isn't it just across the board? It's literally, so it's like money, which is related to value, and that, like, I feel like value is at the top of kind of whatever map I'm thinking of, but this idea of creativity and what else, work, community. There are so many things where we are so superficial, and actually that brings up another point in my head, which was just this idea of the language that we use in Web3 and the opportunities that we have to create new words, or repurpose and redefined words. So something for me was this idea of stewards in the Kernel program, as opposed to, in a traditional type of fellowship, they might, that role might be called something else, but just the language that is used in Web3, when it's done well, I feel like conveys, perfectly the depth of the potential in the space, as opposed to, like you said, just transplanting, traditional definitions in language. So what are kind of some opportunities that you think we have with language in particular? When you see or read something and you're just like, oh, I wish they wouldn't say that? Are there any things that come up and things that you do like, things that resonate, you know, language that might be new in Web3, and you're like, yes, I'm so glad we're using this term?
That most of the words that we use or the terminologies that we use are incredibly I guess welcoming and value based. So for instance, if you look at the creator economy, if you look at community tokens, if you look at you know, the DAOs and what they represent, and the fact that it's all very much focused on recognizing the value that people bring, and it may not be exactly the same for everybody, and it may not be you know, the same path for everybody, and it may not be the same I guess prescriptive formula for everybody, but everybody brings some sort of value, and that needs to be supported through tech means and through again a community that supports that value that you're bringing. Everybody wants to contribute and has something to contribute. This is the other thing. Everybody does. And it's recognizing that, and I think you will have felt it, and I'm sure that most people feel the same way. When you come into the space and you talk to people, you suddenly feel at ease, and you suddenly feel almost like it's that coming home type of feeling of finally this is the place that recognizes who I potentially am and who I can be and what I can contribute. And I think that recognition happens at maybe at different stages for different people, but I think it happens nonetheless, because if you look around, everybody who works in this ecosystem is so, I mean, we've all drank the Kool-Aid, but it's like good. It's like nourishing smoothie, really like delicious, health enhancing Kool-Aid. You know, no sugar, no additives, all of that. But it just feels really good. And I think that's a testament to the fact that the language that we use and the things that we think about are over here versus what we've been used to, which is at a lower level. I won't say lower level of vibration and all of that, because we get into crazy stuff, but it just elevates that conversation, and it elevates not only how we see what the world could be, but we also see what we could be as part of it. And that's why I think for so many of us, it's so important to continue building. It's so important to make sure that we see that to manifestation versus just idea stage. And again, you know, not everybody is like that. And, you know, it's an incredibly fast-paced environment, and also things change so much that it also requires quite a bit of energy, constantly being like, you know, creating these new just the basis and the walls and the rooms and the doors and the everything for a new world. It takes a lot of energy to build that stuff, but I think again, we are just so motivated by everything that that could be, that we, and also the energy that it gives us, that I think it pushes us forward. The main things that I don't like are, and I've said this many times, are the few understand this narratives and all of that is just based on yet again exclusion, yet again kind of keeping people separate and us versus them and all of that, which again, a lot of it is meme based and a lot of it is harmless fun, but I think we should be conscious of not perpetuating those and not taking them too far into the new stuff that we're building.
Yeah. And So just this idea of coming home, it's really funny that you use that language because I literally sent Sachin, who is a steward in Kernel, a Slack message after I think the first orientation, which is in a post I just wrote about Kernel, and I think I literally use those words. I feel like I found my home, and but what's so funny is that it almost doesn't feel like a new home. It feels like a reunion, like that idea of a coming home, which I thought was really strange. Even just hearing how you talked about it, which is strange. It's like this is the natural state of expression, and I was misaligned, and now it's I don't know if you've been to a chiropractor, but it's like being back in literally your spine being back in alignment. But yeah, so I also picked up on this on the piece as well, that this idea that Ethereum is the people, and also based on my experience, this idea that Ethereum is like a signal for the people, and that if life is about people and relationships, like you said, the people in this space are, they're all drinking the same thing, and it feels like a wonderland. Like if you are, really genuine and you want to participate, there's really nothing stopping you, certainly if you surround yourself with the right community. And so how has this experience been for you of connecting with these people in these communities?
I think I've always kind of been a communicator anyway, and I think for me it's very important, and I enjoy not just connecting with people, but connecting people together. And I think it's one of the things that I've done throughout my time in this space is I enjoy recognizing, and I think I'm pretty good at it, recognizing the potential of people and then figuring out based on obviously what comes across my radar and thinking, oh, this person would work really well with this project, or this project could collaborate with this other one, and so on, and kind of seeing those connections in my mind where they almost two rights making an even bigger right. But that is because I feel that conversation and that fluidity in terms of conversation, in terms of sharing ideas, in terms of collaborating, in terms of literally everything that comes with the idea of fluid is what I would associate with the way things happen in Ethereum. It is incredibly, and obviously it's the open source element of it, and it's so many wonderful people collaborating and co-creating ideas, and then getting those from an idea state to an actual real world manifestation that I think makes this such a buzzing and such an inspiring ecosystem, because you see it happen in front of you. This isn't something, and maybe the transparency as well, right? Because everything that tends to in Web 2 experience, everything tends to kind of appear, or you're not really privy to how things happen and how it evolved and how this got from A to B and then to C. But with crypto, and specifically with Ethereum, so many people were a winning team at a hackathon, and now they're a massive project, or they raised money via Gitcoin grants, and now they're at this stage. And you've seen and you've been a part of that journey, potentially, if you contributed to their grant, or if you were part of their community at the beginning. And it's literally witnessing that journey time and time again. And this is again one of the reasons why it's such an exciting opportunity to get involved, because you could so easily be at ground zero of something that is so promising and so world changing that it just becomes this journey of, I contributed and therefore I'm kind of an investor, if you were to take that old school way of relating to it, but also it's something that could be a lifelong passion for you to be involved in a certain project and making sure that it gets to where you want, where you hope it will get to. And it's that fluidity again, that access to opportunity, and so easily, it's such a seamless, um, it's such a seamless flow in once you start looking around, and once you start kind of going, hey, this is pretty cool, maybe I'll try this, maybe I'll look over here, and then you find your people, and then you find your the things that you care about, and maybe you build the thing that you wanted to build all along, and maybe that's your thing, whatever. It's just so open and supportive, that you can just do whatever it is that you decide to do.
Yeah. I know this is going to be a tough question to answer based on your experiences, but is there an experience that stands out, maybe aside from Brandon's, that made you very optimistic? Maybe just another experience that made you very optimistic about this being a path for the future, in terms of just the application of crypto in a way that, I don't know, it just really moved you.
We did a project in the Brazil favelas, where we essentially, all of these things that I talk about just need, because I always run them as pilots to prove to people that things are possible, and they're actually, okay, they're not necessarily super easy to implement, but it's not like they're super hard either. You just have to want to and direct some resources towards it. So we did this project in the Brazil favelas where we worked with Blockchain Academy Brazil and MakerDAO. I think it was 2019. I can't remember. And we essentially worked with this group of youngsters from one of the big Brazil favelas, and we were teaching them about, they had like a basic kind of coding course, and also we were teaching them about crypto. So onboarding them onto wallets, again, getting them to earn some crypto, earn some DAI and some ETH, based on the different things that we were, tasks that we were assigning to them after each lesson. And initially, they had done this course before, and attendance was okay, but it wasn't amazing because, again, if you are from an environment where, you don't necessarily, or you have to make money versus go and learn something, you're going to choose that option because it's just what you need to do. And so
absolutely,
as soon as we introduced the small incentives, and by no means were they large, but there was that incentive of, okay, you learn, you assimilate, and then here is crypto as a reward, we saw not only the attendance go up, but also like the appetite for that crypto education and what more can be done and what else could we do, and I guess the realization of there being this opportunity that doesn't necessarily have to go by the old flows. You finish this, then you move here, then you do this, and if you haven't done that, you can't do this, and all of that. Like, obviously, you need to learn some basics before you can go into more in-depth stuff. But it offered, again, a glimpse into an alternative way of doing things, into an alternative means of income, potentially. And we, again, saw a lot of the kids complete the course. We saw a lot of incredible feedback from them. And it's absolutely something that I want to do more of, bigger, in more countries. But I think, again, those are important things to just create that opportunity. And I think the more we do that, and so many different projects could easily kind of do that, but I know it's difficult to kind of sometimes get something from idea to execution. And I think DAOs, we see this all the time. It's like, yeah, what a great idea. Yeah, let's execute. And then people are like, what? So, but we'll get there, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's incredible, and I'm excited to see more of those initiatives. And also, is there like an open source kind of playbook for getting more of these regional initiatives up and running, or do people just reach out to the people who run the regional thing and just say, "Hey, I'm thinking of this, doing this over here," or is there a resource?
I don't think there is a resource. And one of the key ingredients of, let's say, modular open source economies is a very clear set of instructions, and then everything else in a modular way that you can just kind of pick and choose whatever suits that particular use case. And I think that's very important. I think we try to do those project per project, but I think potentially there could be a living, breathing document that can constantly be updated and adjusted and, supplemented with new information, better information at all times for something like this. I think, yeah, that could be a very worthy endeavor. Maybe we should do that with Kernel.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah. Let's do that.
What? Okay, that's a good plan. Now we just need to. Now I know how you feel about people who don't take action, so I'm definitely going to take action on that one.
Oh my god, was that really obvious? You've gone down in my book. Thank
you, Simona, so much for this conversation and for just being such a light in my crypto journey. I'm so grateful. Every time I'm in a virtual room with you, I just walk away kind of with having to pick my jaw up off the floor. And yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you so much. And I'm excited to see all of the wonderful things that you'll be doing.
Okay.